In 1944, before World War II had even ended, the most powerful nations on Earth met in secret to redesign the global financial system. They did not gather on a battlefield. They gathered in a quiet hotel in the mountains of New Hampshire. 44 countries sent representatives, economists, bankers, finance ministers, strategists. The world was exhausted. Europe was destroyed. Asia was burning. Currencies were collapsing. Gold reserves were drained. International trade had nearly stopped. Everyone understood one thing. If the war ended without a new financial order, chaos would follow. Hyperinflation, currency wars, debt defaults, economic collapse. The memory of the Great Depression was still fresh. No one wanted a repeat. But beneath the language of cooperation was a deeper reality. Only one country held real power. The United States. Its factories were intact. Its gold reserves were massive. Its economy had expanded during the war. It was not bankrupt. It was dominant. And dominance demands structure. At Bretton Woods, the official mission was stability, to create a system that would prevent future depressions, to coordinate exchange rates, to restore global trade. But the unofficial mission was hierarchy, to design a world where one currency sat at the center, and every other currency revolved around it. The result was revolutionary. The United States dollar would become the anchor of the global financial system. Other currencies would be pegged to it, and the dollar itself would be pegged to gold, $35 per ounce. This arrangement gave the illusion of stability, but it created dependence. Every country now needed dollars to trade, to settle accounts, to rebuild, to stabilize. If they did not have dollars, they needed access to them through exports, through borrowing, through alignment. Two new institutions were created, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank. Officially, they were tools of reconstruction. In reality, they became instruments of influence. If a country faced crisis, it could borrow, but borrowing came with conditions, spending cuts, currency adjustments, policy reforms, market openings. Economic sovereignty became negotiable. And over time, predictable patterns emerged. Countries that aligned with the dollar system thrived. Countries that resisted struggled. The global economy became layered. At the top, dollar issuers. Below, dollar earners. Below that, dollar borrowers. Power flowed upward. Risk flowed downward. And for decades, the system appeared stable. Trade expanded. Living standards improved. Reconstruction succeeded. But stability carried tension, because the United States could print dollars, and the rest of the world had to earn them. For more than 2 decades after World War II, the Bretton Woods system appeared unbreakable. Currencies were stable. Trade expanded. Factories rebuilt. Middle classes grew. Confidence returned. To most people, it looked like a golden age. But beneath the surface, pressure was building. The system depended on one fragile promise, that every dollar could be exchanged for gold, $35 per ounce. On paper, this guaranteed trust. In reality, it created a contradiction. The United States supplied dollars to the world, but it did not possess unlimited gold. As global trade expanded, demand for dollars exploded. Foreign governments accumulated massive reserves. European and Asian central banks stored American currency. Banks settled international trade in dollars. The entire world depended on American liquidity. To supply that liquidity, the United States ran deficits. It spent more than it earned. It imported more than it exported. It financed military bases. It funded wars. It expanded social programs, all paid with newly created dollars. By the 1960s, the gap between dollars and gold became obvious. There were far more dollars in circulation than gold in American vaults. Foreign leaders noticed. So did bankers. So did economists. They understood that if everyone demanded gold at once, the system would collapse. And some began to test it. France, under Charles de Gaulle, openly challenged American monetary dominance. French ships arrived in New York to collect gold. Other countries followed. Gold reserves began to drain. Confidence weakened. Speculation increased. Pressure intensified. The United States faced a dilemma: reduce spending and defend gold, or abandon gold and preserve power. Defending gold meant austerity, cutting military budgets, reducing social programs, raising taxes, risking recession. Abandoning gold meant something else. It meant turning the dollar into pure credit, pure trust, pure political instrument. In August 1971, President Richard Nixon made the decision. He closed the gold window. Foreign governments could no longer exchange dollars for gold. The Bretton Woods system ended overnight. No international vote, no negotiation, no warning. One announcement transformed global finance. From that moment forward, money was no longer anchored to anything physical. It was backed by policy, by military power, by economic influence, by confidence. Critics predicted collapse. They expected hyperinflation. They expected currency wars. They expected chaos. Instead, something unexpected happened. The dollar strengthened. Why? Because the United States controlled energy. In the early 1970s, Washington negotiated agreements with major oil producers. Oil would be priced in dollars. Energy exporters would recycle surplus dollars into American assets, treasury bonds, banks, investments. This became the petrodollar system. Every country now needed dollars to buy oil. Every country now needed access to American financial markets. Every country now depended on the Federal Reserve. Global demand for dollars became permanent. The gold anchor disappeared. A geopolitical anchor replaced it. Military alliances, trade agreements, security guarantees, sanctions, financial infrastructure. The dollar empire adapted, and it expanded. Without gold constraints, credit exploded. Banks created new products. Derivatives multiplied. Leverage increased. Speculation intensified. Global capital flowed faster than ever. Crises became larger, but rescues became larger too. Debt replaced discipline. Liquidity replaced limits. By the late 20th century, finance dominated economics. Trading profits exceeded manufacturing profits. Asset prices outpaced wages. Debt outpaced productivity. The world was floating on credit, yet no alternative system emerged. Because leaving the dollar system was costly. Currencies weakened, capital fled, imports became expensive, inflation rose, governments faced unrest. So most countries stayed inside, even when they complained, even when they suffered, even when they recognized the imbalance because participation was safer than isolation. Bretton Woods was gone, but its hierarchy remained, and in many ways, it became stronger. After the collapse of Bretton Woods, the world entered an era of floating currencies and unlimited credit. Exchange rates moved freely, capital crossed borders instantly, money became digital, finance became global. At first, this flexibility appeared liberating. Countries could devalue to boost exports. Central banks could stimulate growth. Governments could finance deficits. Markets could innovate. But flexibility also meant fragility. Without hard limits, excess accumulated. Debt expanded, bubbles formed, imbalances deepened. And every few years, the system tested its own boundaries. In 1982, Latin America collapsed under dollar-denominated debt. In 1997, Asian economies imploded. In 2000, technology stocks crashed. In 2008, global finance nearly disintegrated. In 2020, pandemic shutdowns triggered historic intervention. Each crisis followed the same sequence. Capital fled to safety. The dollar strengthened. Central banks flooded markets with liquidity. Governments borrowed massively. Asset prices recovered. Inequality widened. Confidence returned. Then the cycle repeated. The dollar system absorbed shocks. It transferred losses. It preserved core institutions. It protected financial networks. It sacrificed peripheral economies. This is how empires function. They centralize stability. They decentralize risk. They concentrate reward. They disperse cost. But why does the system persist? Why does the world continue using a currency created by one nation? Why does global trade still depend on American institutions? Why do crises still revolve around Federal Reserve decisions? Because the dollar system controls infrastructure, payment networks, clearing systems, banking standards, legal frameworks, reserve assets, credit ratings, insurance markets, shipping finance, energy settlement, technology platforms. Leaving this ecosystem means rebuilding everything. It is expensive, it is risky, it is politically dangerous. So most nations adapt instead. They accumulate reserves, they manage exposure, they diversify slowly, they hedge quietly, they criticize publicly, but comply privately. Even rising powers remain entangled. China trades in dollars, Europe settles in dollars, emerging markets borrow in dollars, multinational corporations price in dollars. Global finance speaks one language, and that language is American. This gives Washington extraordinary influence. Sanctions become weapons, interest rates become global signals, liquidity becomes leverage, regulation becomes geopolitics. A policy change in Washington can destabilize continents. A speech by the Federal Reserve Chair can move trillions. Few voters realize this power exists. Fewer understand how it operates. Yet it shapes employment, housing, inflation, investment, migration, politics, social stability. This is the invisible empire, not based on territory, based on settlement, not enforced by soldiers, enforced by clearinghouses, not governed by colonies, governed by contracts. And like all empires, it faces pressure. Debt levels are historic, political polarization is rising, geopolitical tensions are intensifying, digital currencies are emerging. Alternative payment systems are developing, regional alliances are forming. Some countries experiment with de-dollarization, bilateral trade in local currencies, gold accumulation, cryptocurrency reserves, new development banks, parallel infrastructure. But breaking free is difficult because confidence is sticky, networks are entrenched, habits persist, trust accumulates over decades. The dollar system has survived wars, inflation, defaults, crashes, scandals, political crises, and each time it adapted, it rebranded, it restructured, it re-expanded. Until now, whether this system will last another century is uncertain, but its influence today is undeniable. Bretton Woods created the architecture, 1971 removed the limits, modern finance optimized the machine, and the world learned to live inside it. Understanding the system does not mean rejecting it. It means navigating it intelligently. It means recognizing power flows. It means anticipating shocks. It means protecting autonomy. It means building optionality. Because in a dollar-dominated world, ignorance is vulnerability, and awareness is leverage. In the next episode, we will expose how quantitative easing became the modern money printer and why crisis has become permanent policy. If you want to understand how power really works, subscribe, because this story is still unfolding.